And we're live here, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. What's up, guys? Nick Script on the P2W Fantasy Podcast. Have a good show here today. And last time we tried this show, like my computer completely exploded. There was flames in the room, lost Wi-Fi. I made these two guys host the show for me. But since then, I upgraded the Wi-Fi. Hopefully, all is good and well in the world now. But you guys are tuning in. We got a redraft focus show today. We're hitting a bunch of different topics, and I told these guys privately, I'm like, hey, sometimes the simple topics make for a good show, and we're getting closer and closer to redraft season. So before we jump into anything fantasy football related, I want to make sure I introduce both of these guys. So next to me, to my left or right, depending on how your screen looks, I got Joe, who writes for Fantasy Pros. You do content with fantasy data, triple play. That's a great group of guys who I've known since I started in this space. Club Fantasy as well. I cracked the joke last time, but nobody probably heard it. But I said this guy has never lost a celebrity boxing match, so you have to always throw that in there as well. But Joe, where can we find you for the people that are listening in their car, maybe tomorrow or the next day? And why don't you talk about what you got going on?
I mean, you can find me on all social media, JPEP20. Like I said last week, I made it very simple for myself so I don't log myself out by mistake. Find me anywhere with JPEP20. Find a few new articles coming to Fantasy Pros. You might see me in another celebrity boxing match in August and another celebrity sport that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. So we got to sign that contract first.
All right. So we got some news to come. It sounds like news dropping soon. Colin below me. Colin plays fantasy football in leagues that I have been in for a while. We got a couple home leagues that we play in together. I know you have contributed to IDP guys as well, but if I literally had to list off like the most competitive guys in my home leagues, Colin's at the top of that list because we're always meeting in like the fucking semifinal or something like that year in and year out. So always glad talking football with you. He stood up in my wedding. I stood up in his, so this is my guy. But Colin, man, same question. What's up, and where can we find you?
Yeah, man, not too much. Just kind of been dealing with a lot of wedding stuff going on lately. Took a little break from the content creation just to kind of focus on some prioritizing things. And you can find me at Shotgun Fantasy. Hopefully, I'll be dropping some content soon with the IDP guys. With those guys, you can find them at idpguys.org. We actually just dropped a few cool tools with them with the Rookie Draft Magazine and their IDP Draft Kit. So feel free to check that out. And yeah, just Nick hit it on the head, man. We've been super competitive through fantasy leagues for years now. And it's been great competition because it's always fun to have that one guy where you just like, you want to beat him every time you play. And like just the trash talk's always there. So it's always a good time with playing with Nick.
Absolutely. And we both hate losing to each other, that's for sure. But as always, this podcast is partnered up with the Fantasy Points Media Group. If you go to fantasypoints.com/subscribe, one-stop shop for everything you're looking for: articles, rankings, best ball, DFS, everything's in one spot. You can use the promo code P2W22. If you are tuning in, we have a great redraft show hitting a bunch of different topics, and we'll get there in a second.
Play to win, no fear to give. I feel, but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I'll pick the best on trip, they don't understand. I play to win, yeah, I play to win. I play to win, yeah, I play to win. I play to win, oh, play to win. I play to win, yeah, play to win. I play to win.
All right, so I got a series of different topics today to talk about. Redraft focus. So again, redraft being your one-season leagues that you might play at with your home buddies, or at the office, or maybe with some random people on Twitter. But 1-year leagues, and it's very focused on the now. But I want to ask you guys. We'll go Joe, Colin. Before we talk about any of these specific topics, what's a mistake people make too often, you think, in redraft leagues? Because obviously we sit and pound the table all the time about like, this is a sleeper, go do this, like this is how you win, this and that. But I feel like we don't really touch on the negative side of things that maybe we need to be aware of. So what comes to mind for you, Joe?
So for me, I think it's people that get too nervous once they see a train happening, whether it be quarterback, running back, wide receiver. Once they start seeing like 3-4 of one position, they think they just have to go for the next guy, even if they don't like them. So for me, it's like, okay, if you start seeing, and it doesn't happen like this way, but like let's just say you start seeing Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and whatnot, you see him bouncing off the board. Don't rush for a guy. Just wait. He'll come. He'll be okay.
Or Colin, anything building off of that, and what's some of your thoughts?
Well, just to kind of piggyback off that, one thing I would say is I've kind of had in mind for more of like the not so like fantasy expert, like how we play and like all the stuff that we know, but like I would say grabbing too many like one positional players like quarterback, tight end, or defense. Like I think drafting like more than one of those is just kind of, you don't really have to like in your actual draft. I would more so like wait till after the draft and kind of assess there and see if like maybe you need to drop someone to pick up another like tight end that like, because you don't really have a good tight end. But I wouldn't draft like multiple positions of those said positions. That'd be like one thing I would say.
And I think we see that happen pretty often. I've seen it where like it's a one quarterback league and it's not the biggest of benches, but we want to roster those like big name guys. We want to have like, 3 or 4 guys that obviously everybody knows because everybody knows quarterbacks, and it's kind of useless because you're not going to be able to beat the waiver wire a lot of times for those guys that blow up because you're wasting a spot on your bench. Like if I'm starting Justin Herbert every single week, I don't need, Justin Fields and Trey Lance and Daniel Jones on my bench because I think they're all sleepers. I'm going to play Justin Herbert every single week, but then I'm going to be missing out on other guys that I'll have to bid on or, hit the waiver wire button for. Any comments on that one, Joe?
No, I fully agree with that. I think he nailed it on the head. I'm not trying, like you said, Daniel Jones, Trey Lance. Like I don't need to grab 4 or 5 people if I have a Josh Allen, a Justin Herbert. Like I'm not even grabbing another one. I'll just wait till the bye week and then I'll do my flop and switch there.
And other side of the ball. So obviously you talk about a little bit of negative stuff. Positive side, Colin, what's give me one piece of redraft advice, because again, like these seem like super common topics, and a lot of us have played fantasy football for a long time, but you kind of hit it on the head. Like we can't always expect people to be, degenerate diehards like we are, where we're like diving into this shit like nonstop and playing in 20 leagues and stuff like that. But what's something that comes to mind?
One thing that I thought of is when you have, let's say in your first probably like 1 to 4 rounds. Obviously you're grabbing like a top name, top guy within those rounds, and say they get off to a bad start. I think the worst thing you could do is trade those guys for less value just because you're not happy with the results so far. And I think you have to sometimes just stay water and just kind of wait, because to me, the more important part of the fantasy season is the last 8 weeks. So you don't want to like get rid of someone just because you don't think that or you think they're just going to do that all season, because that's not usually the case. So usually I would just say to just hold your studs and just kind of wait and see before you just trade guys away and lose value.
Yeah, I feel like you get very reactionary in redraft just because like Dynasty, you're like taught like, hey, have some patience with certain guys, and it's okay to bench and stash guys. And for redraft, you go on a 2-game losing streak, and now people start freaking out and just saying, I gotta like blow up my team right now and change everything, and I need to trade away my value and spread my team out, or vice versa, and things like that. So redraft can be pretty reactionary, but you have to be careful, because we see it happen all the time where guys have a slow start and then they blow off the rest of the year, or you try to capitalize on value because you don't think it's going to last, and then it does last. So Joe, any further thoughts on that? And then give me yours.
Hit me with the question again, because I was fixing the audio.
Hey, you sound good now, man. Yeah, it sounds good. There we go. No, just we talked about like the negative sides of things, mistakes. What about just a simple piece of advice for a redraft?
I mean, I think especially if it's one quarterback, which is still the majority of people, like the simple piece of advice is just wait on that quarterback. Like you really don't have to rush for him. And I always seem to find everyone who picks that quarterback nice and early, they don't like their team as much as everybody else who's looking down at their paper or whatever they wrote their team on. They're like, wow, look at all these wide receivers, running backs, studs. Just load up at the positions that have 2 or 3 spots that you need to fill every week. Worry about that quarterback later, because it comes up every year where it's like Mahomes or Lamar or Josh, depending on the year, and it's like we go too early all the time, and that's a problem.
And I think that kind of shifts into a piece of the show sheet at some point. So I'll probably hold my thoughts there because I think Colin's going to touch on that. It's a good piece of advice just in general there. And I'll just finish it off with
100%.
saying that you have to be extremely active for the duration of the redraft season. You have to hit the waiver wires. You have to pay attention to injury news. You should look to trade to make your team better, because that's the whole focus, is to have the best possible team that you can have out there on a weekly basis. And a lot of people take too many weeks off, and just being somebody that's active for, 15 weeks or 14 weeks of football sometimes pushes you over the edge of a team that's got a better team than you. So yeah, I think, simple piece of advice. Let's get a question from the chat real quick. Angie, who is awesome, asks, I'm drafting a lot of Chris Olave in all formats, but mostly best ball. What's your thoughts on him being a starter from the beginning? So Chris Olave, Saints took him in the first round out of Ohio State. Profiles is a really, really smooth route runner. He scored a decent amount of touchdowns, too, a lot of touchdowns. While at Ohio State, Justin Fields and him, they had a great connection. He was Justin Fields' go-to guy. I think it was 19 and 20, and then it kind of shifted, and it was JSN and Garrett Wilson when Fields was gone. But either one of you guys can jump in here. What's your thoughts on Chris Olave with him being a starter from the beginning?
Me first? Okay.
Yeah, you start it up.
No problem. Yeah, so actually, like for me, a lot of my dynasty drafts, I actually got a few shares of Chris Olave myself, and I'm actually pretty excited because this class wasn't very, I would say, ranking heavy. Like it's kind of like after the first like 2 or 3, it's kind of like a wide range of what could happen. But I think Chris Olave is going into a good situation in terms of the Saints right now don't really have a specific wide receiver one. I mean, they have Michael Thomas, but we don't really know where he is in that rehab, which is crazy because it's been 2 years now. So the sky's the limit right now, I would say, for that wide receiver room. I know they have Jarvis Landry now too, but I think with the athleticism of Chris Olave, I think he could really make his mark year one. But it's tough to see just because of how rookies are kind of worked in. I mean, even over the last couple of years, like Jefferson started a little slow, Chase started a little slow. Like, well, it'll be interesting to see, but I think he's got a good position right now because of how that wide receiver room is stacked up right now.
Joe, same page or different?
I'm kind of on the same page. I have a rule that I loosely follow about trying to get the wide receiver one of the team on my teams. And like you said, Mike Thomas, he's been out. We haven't seen it for a while. I feel like I'm going down the sheet a little bit, so I'm trying to leave some stuff out so we can talk about it later. But Chris Olave could end up being the wide receiver one. I don't think that's going to be Jarvis Landry in any sense of the word. The only person that can fight him for that is Michael Thomas. He's getting up there in age. He's coming off this rehab. He hasn't played in forever. And Chris Olave just runs routes so beautifully that I think he could be like another Godwin-esque player for Jameis Winston back, on his 5,000-yard season. So I'm all for Chris Olave because I want that wide receiver one. And when you get down to where his ADP is, there's not many opportunities for that, and he's one of the few.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I typically try to, look at, ADP to a decent degree, but then like figure out, who has the ability to either like running back position, who has the best chance to touch the ball the most, wide receiver position, who has the best chance to have the most targets. And you can look at that situation and say it's up for grabs. I like that she put in best ball there because, Landry doesn't have a massive injury history, but he's getting up there. And last season he was banged up. And then Michael Thomas has had this like weird ass, like, he was amazing. And then he's been like out with like an ankle issue for like 2 years now. So we don't really know what that's looking like. So to me, that whole wide receiver room is a bit, complex because it's such a big range. Michael Thomas could be for sure the alpha and lead everything. He could not even play the first X amount of weeks. Chris Olave might step in and be that wide receiver one. Maybe it's Landry. It's tough. But I think if you did like Chris Olave in college and you do like Jameis Winston, you like the system and the potential, then I'd say for redraft, I don't mind taking a stab at him and throwing him on the bench, especially if you think he's got a little bit of upside there. And 3 weeks into the season, he's getting 3 targets a week. Then you just cut ties. I mean, if there's an injury, maybe he pops up later. But that's the beauty about redraft versus dynasty is that you can cut ties. If you're not liking what you're seeing. So that's a good question from Angie. And let's pivot it into the actual show here. So redraft topics today. First one I want to bring up: fading at cost in all caps. There. Whoa, I didn't know it was gonna be that big, but. I just did a podcast the other day, and I know, like I'm not playing with the show sheet, but I did a show the other day where I did something like this. It was fading at cost. So I don't want to dive into my guys necessarily, but some of the guys that I mentioned for various reasons on that podcast were Aaron Rodgers, Mike Gesicki, Debo, MVS, Akers, and Gibson. And I wasn't saying that I thought that they were all going to bust. I just didn't like where they were going in drafts, and I prefer some guys after them. So I said because of the cost, and by cost I mean where they are being drafted, I was fading them. So I want to start off on that topic just because I just hit on it and get your guys' opinions here. So Joe, who comes to mind? He's a guy. Maybe you're not saying he's going to bust, but you just don't like where he's going at cost, and you're going to fade him in your redraft drafts.
I don't like Eli Mitchell where he's going right now. He's a little too high for me, and for the Niners and the Patriots, I am always saying take the guy at the bottom of the list. Like whoever the lowest one is ADP-wise, go for that person. Because in that first 6-7 rounds, you can't, in my sense, you can't win your redraft league, but you could sure as hell lose it. And if you get Eli Mitchell and he's sharing all over the place with either Jeff Wilson or Hasty or the new rookie that's eluding my mind right now, Davis Price. And just you can ruin your team that way. And it's every year. Like 1 year we fell in love with Mostert. 1 year we fell in love with Hasty. 1 year we fell in love with Wilson. None of us could figure out Kyle Shanahan. And he even drafted somebody like Trey Sermon and then just said, sit on the bench. Like, I don't even like you. So nobody knows what he's going to do. Just if you want a Niners running back, if you want part of that scheme, don't go as early as Eli Mitchell, who I believe is at ADP 49 that I checked last. And that's way too high for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting backfield to say the least, just because, again, they brought in another guy. They just brought in, Sermon last year earlier than Mitchell, and Jeff Wilson is back too. I've recently said that I liked Elijah Mitchell just because of the weeks that he was 100% healthy. He was rushing for a lot of yards. He was scoring touchdowns. And the other thing I did like too is that he was out for like a 2-week span. And then, Jeff Wilson came in and he actually had like a good game or two. And then the minute that Mitchell came back, like Wilson was not playing that much at all. So it wasn't much of a committee, but there's some other asterisks around it. It might be, is it a short leash situation in that running back room? If Mitchell starts off the season and he's not performing well, how short is that leash, knowing that they got 3 other guys that obviously they wanted? They wanted Jeff Wilson back there. They wanted Sermon at some point, and Davis Price they wanted as well. And then the other thing is, I'm not a big injury prone guy, but he did miss a decent amount of time last year. So that's another asterisk. So he's been a guy I've liked, but I won't like say that I'm 100% comfortable. There's other guys I'm 100% comfortable. DeAndre, I always talk about him too much.
Yeah.
I'm 100% comfortable, even with the injury stuff. But with Mitchell, I can't say the same. But Colin, what's your thoughts on Mitchell?
Well, obviously the opportunity as of right now, I would say is pretty strong for him, because right now he's probably listed as their starter. But the one positive aspect I would see out of him is that, to my understanding, I don't think they've brought in any like veteran running back. It's only the guys that they've either had previously or like newly drafted running backs. So I think that's a good sign for Mitchell's like value and like his position. And I know that the 49ers don't really care for Sermon at all. He hardly played. And like, even when people were hurt, he wasn't playing. So like, he's probably good as gone at this point. But I think Mitchell has the opportunity, but like you said, Nick, like you were looking at his healthy games because he had a lot of unhealthy games. And there was like multiple injuries too. So it's like, yeah, it's a little, you're paying for that cost. Like Joe was saying, if he gets hurt. Like you said, you can lose your league, but like he can also help you win it too if he stays healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the teeter-totter for him. And the question in the on the screen here, if you can't see, Nino asks, is Trey Sermon a fade because of TDP, who is the rookie they brought in? Colin pretty much said that pretty much from what you said, it sounds like he is a fade, especially for redraft, because I think the 49ers is a backfield that you'll look to take the handcuff maybe in your redraft league. Who that's going to be, though, I'm not entirely sure. But if I had to throw a dart, I don't know if I'm going to do it on Sermon, who like I don't know, they thought he was like gross or something last year because they didn't want nothing to do with this guy. He must have came in
and he was
camp
drafted higher.
Yeah, he was, and he must have came into the camp and they're like, dude, what do we do here? What do we do here? So I think TDP, Davis Price, Hurts. Some people who drafted him in their rookie drafts come out and they'll say like, oh, he's probably going to win the job over Mitchell. But I think he hurts Sermon more than maybe, but I think he hurts Sermon more than he hurts Mitchell. So yeah, I'm out on Trey Sermon as well. But Colin, who was your guy that you're fading a bit at cost this year?
Actually, Joe alluded to it a little earlier with the quarterbacks, like not going for them super early in redraft leagues, and my player is actually Josh Allen. Obviously, great talent, great fantasy player. I think he's the back-to-back QB1 the last 2 years. But the only thing one of the things that makes me stay away from him at his cost right now, which I think is right before the second round ends, like 23, is it's very hard for fantasy players to produce that level of efficiency and production year in and year out. I don't think many players repeat as the fantasy positional number one like many times. So it's just that alone is like kind of makes me nervous about him. And I just think there's other players that you can get at a lower cost that can produce similar, like a Lamar, a Kyler, or Jalen Hurts, which you're getting 4, 5, 7 rounds later. So to me, I think there's more opportunity for other players to kind of produce similar or even better than what Josh Allen can do. I just think just right now that cost is a little too high for me. And I usually fade quarterbacks until like the 5th or 6th round at least. So to me, that's just way too high. And I'd rather get a stud running back or a stud wide receiver at that spot.
And Joe, same question going back to you. How are you feeling about Josh Allen from what Colin said, or your own opinion about redraft leagues?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, we love Josh Allen; he's a great player, but he's just really high up in that ADP right now. And like you said, I could get a Kyler, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Trey Lance. Like, I can get somebody with that running upside who can also throw the ball and get me touchdowns that way too. So I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna build it up elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. And Kevin is not in the chat. He says Joe is wrong no matter what. So maybe he's not on the same page. I don't know if I want to be on the same page then. But Josh Allen. So looking at like Fantasy Pros ADP rankings for positions for this coming season PPR. Josh Allen's at 23 overall. So here's some guys around him. I'm going to start at 20. So CeeDee Lamb, Mark Andrews, Aaron Jones. Then it's Josh Allen, Leonard Fournette, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans. So that group of guys, I think you can argue that, a good chunk of those guys. So obviously Mark Andrews is probably going to finish somewhere between 1 and 3, right? Just being safe about it. CeeDee Lamb, Leonard Fournette, Aaron Jones, those guys are all guys that for their position, same with A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, you might argue that they can be top 12 for their position. And if you pivot from Josh Allen and you wait for a Jalen Hurts later in the draft or a Lamar Jackson, you can take one of those positional players that probably will finish top 12 and grab that quarterback that maybe won't finish as high as Josh Allen, but might have that same sort of rushing floor and passing upside and fill out your team better. And I think that's something I've done more so with the redraft leagues is like not really bite on the quarterback. I think I'll bite on the tight end depending on how, my strategy and how the board is falling to me, but I don't really bite on the quarterback because I feel like then you miss out filling your roster the way it can be.
Only to gain like a few more point like advantage per game. And it's not like unless it's like 10 or 15 points per game difference, like it's not going to be that much of a fall off.
Yeah, and like you guys said, you mentioned Andrews and you mentioned Lamar. You could get them both if you just took Andrews in the one and Lamar later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's just the way you want to fill out your team at the end of the day. But you'll have people that will reach on the quarterbacks. And if I had to rank quarterbacks for next year, I'll probably still have Allen as one. But you'll see in your home league sometimes, like, it's the first round, it's like the 110, and somebody takes Josh Allen. You're like, holy shit! Like, now the whole draft just changed right there. So it's always an interesting topic there. But I want to go and shift over, and I was gonna type these out in advance, but I'm just going to do it on the fly here. Smash the ADP is going to be the next one. So we're talking about guys we don't really like their price for this coming season, just based off of where they're going in drafts. Now we're looking at guys. So ADP, this is where guys are being drafted either in general, as a whole, or for their specific position. So looking at guys that you feel like can smash their ADP. Let's go, Colin. Who's a guy that comes to mind for you is where they're going right now? You're like, he's finishing ahead. Is that?
For right now, I would say I was actually taking a look earlier. I had one guy in mind, but then I changed my mind just because I was just looking more into it. For me, it's not really a guy I'm targeting, but I think if I get him at this price, I feel like it's a no-brainer. And for me, it's Robert Woods. Because for right now, and I know Robert Woods is one of your guys, has always been. So I know you probably like that. And so for me, the reason why is because right now he's going as the wide receiver 42, according to Fantasy Pros for PPR. And to me, he's Tennessee's wide receiver 1. I know they drafted Treylon Burks and everything associated with that, but he's also had his issues with his asthma and his ability to probably stay on the field like longer than I'm sure the team would want him to be. So in my eyes, from what I've read, I think his recovery from the ACL is going well, and he kind of tore it later into the season. So that's a good sign, especially for someone at his age. So I think getting someone or a team's wide receiver 1 that late, I think it was overall 99 is a steal to me. So I think for me, I would smash that every time, in all caps.
In all caps, the ADP part too. But I like that part you mentioned, though, because it goes back to what we talked about earlier about like identifying guys that are going later that have that potential to be the number 1. And just 4 days ago on the Sleeper app, it says Robert Woods expected to be number 1 option. And I'm not out on Treylon Burks, but I look at Robert Woods, who 2018 through 2020 has had 130, 139, and 129 targets. So he's obviously a guy that has handled volume very well in the past. Just as recent as 2020, weeks 1 through 16, he was the wide receiver 12 overall. He averaged 15.8 fantasy points. So he legit just was a top 12 wide receiver, which kind of like jacked me up for my Cooper Kupp ranking coming into this year. I was like, big whiff there. But I think people, they see Treylon Burks, and, he's this big guy that was super productive and used in a wide variety of ways, that got drafted when they got rid of A.J. Brown, and they don't look at Robert Woods stepping in and being a true veteran. I don't know the timeline. I thought, like you said, he seems to be on track for the start of the season. That'd be my only question mark there with him. But I'm with you, because again, if you're looking at a guy who literally just finished as a wide receiver 1, and now he's going as the wide receiver 42. I know sometimes the ACL injuries are delay some people, but I think it's more for the running back position. But I'm not like a doctor or anything. But Joe,
yeah, I was actually gonna say, like, it's not like in comparison to J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards right now. Like they're expected to be on the PUP, and they tore theirs pre-season. So like
that's interesting.
If he's already like not getting that negative news, I feel like they say, no news, or what is it? No, no news is good news, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good sign towards him. So I mean, we'll see here coming in the next few weeks.
They had the videos of him at camp doing drills and stuff, and he's pumping the legs and stuff. So I'm hoping he's ready week 1, because I like that a lot too. I think he'll be a guy I try to target, because I know he's going to fall down draft boards. He's not like a sexy pick. Joe, any Robert Woods thoughts?
I mean, I feel like the entire Titans team is not a sexy pick, to be honest with you. But if I have to take someone, I'm taking Robert Woods. We've heard too much of the negative with Burks right now with the asthma and everything you've hit on already. So I 100% agree. If I'm going to take that shot to try to get a late wide receiver one from a team, Woods is going to be on that little menu for me.
All right, and who is your guy? Same topic, a guy that you feel can smash their ADP for this coming season.
So my guy is Chase Edmonds, and I think I never shut up about Chase Edmonds, to be completely honest with you. I love Chase Edmonds. We know what he could do. We've seen what he's done in Arizona. Like, he was able to get those receptions. He did it in 12 games. But the biggest thing for me is that a team doesn't pay a running back anymore. They just draft them and then get rid of them when the years are done for the rookie contract. So the Dolphins actually brought him in and said, we want you because you fit our scheme. Now, yeah, you could bring in, Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert, two guys that don't scare me whatsoever. One can't even stay healthy. One is just kind of boring and dull in the game. But I like Chase Edmonds. Like, he had 116 carries last year in 12 games. I think he can obviously do more than that if he stays healthy. But if you pay a running back in this day and age, you better use them. And I think with Tyreek Hill and Waddle and Gesicki all running routes, that box should be open.
I like that point a lot because, we see these crowded backfields sometimes and we're like, well, who's going to be the guy? But sometimes, the future is in what the money is. And you say, hey, well, like, this guy's making X amount and these guys are not, which is not always the case because we've seen, other guys step up and win jobs before. But Chase Edmonds, I like Chase Edmonds as well because I feel like where he's going in drafts is around the handcuff area for running backs. Because I was looking at the ADP, I think this morning it was running back 34. So Michael Carter's around there. Michael Carter
exactly
is not going to beat out Breece Hall. That I don't.
No.
I would bet a lot of money that he's not going to beat out Breece Hall. Well, is he a dead running back? I don't think so. I think he's still going to have a role in everything. But I think that
100%.
Edmonds has that ability to lead his team in touches. And then we got Ken Walker. Sorry.
Don't mess that up.
I know. I'm going to get a DM and be like, bruh. Sorry. Melvin Gordon's good too, but I don't think I'd project him to lead his backfield, and I think he still can have a good season. But Chase Edmonds, 2021 weeks 1 through 8, he was the running back 17 with 50% of those games being 14 plus fantasy points, and he had 4 to 7 catches somewhere in that range in each of those games, which you like to have for PPR leagues. And it's an explosive offense. He's the pass catching guy. Sony Michel, kind of can. Raheem Mostert, probably not. So you got the pass catching guy that got paid and might lead his team in touches. I'm on board with Chase Edmonds, and I really have never been on board with Chase Edmonds. But I threw out
and he gives you that ability to do hero ball with your draft. You can go let's just throw somebody's name out there, Dalvin Cook, wide receivers all the way through, and then Chase Edmonds around that 8-9 round, and you're perfect.
Yeah, Colin, any Chase Edmonds thoughts?
Yeah, I was actually going to piggyback on what you said about the what he's going around. If it's between him and Michael Carter, obviously Breece Hall is the new guy in town. So if I can get the possible starter on Miami or at least the PPR guy on Miami, I'll take that all day over someone who's probably going to sit or just be kind of the backup in another backfield.
I think we're on the same page, but I don't think the ADP is on the same page because again, he hasn't really changed too much, even with the Miami signing. So again, also having Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who we know are going to open up the field and stretch the field. Sometimes that opens up a shit ton of stuff in the middle of the field and for the guy out of the backfield. So if he's one catching passes and you got Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill going deep and, having that distraction, that might open him up a whole lot of space moving forward. So I do like how this offense is. But my guy, I feel like I talk about the same guys too much all the time. So I just did a I just did a thread today of like guys that I think are going to be breakouts. So I try to pivot away from those guys, but I'm going to go pretty deeper here. And I'm going to go Jahan Dotson, who right now is the wide receiver 63. And I like Dotson, in college, number 18 overall in receiving yards, number 12 in receptions. He tied for 8th for touchdowns for all of college football. He got taken 16th overall, went to Penn State. Commanders came in and grabbed him. He went ahead of Burks. He went ahead of Christian Watson and Sky Moore and George Pickens. 98.5 yards per game in 2021. He had a 41% dominator rating, meaning that's the percent of his team's receiving production. And he was one of the highest in that category. So if we look at him as a prospect, not, some knocks on him, a little bit later of a breakout age. He's not the biggest guy. He probably did have the worst QB out of the first and second round wide receivers in this class, but he profiles as a guy that has a good catch and run ability. He's got a lot of speed. Curtis Samuel, is he going to be the 2, or is it Dotson? Right now, OTAs is kind of saying Dotson, so I guess we'll have to see how that goes. The other thing is Terry's situation is kind of up for grabs right now too, because I don't think that they've made that deal, and they said they're not going to trade him. But they also said the same thing about A.J. Brown with the Titans. I mean, he could be traded, and then out of nowhere, we got a rookie that might be the one on this team. So there's some upside to Dotson, especially if he does win that wide receiver 2 job. And where he's going in drafts, again, if I'm building my redraft team, he's going as wide receiver 63. That might be one of the bottom picks of the draft that I can just, throw him on my bench. And if he's getting 5 to 7 targets week 1 and 2, then I'm going to hold on to him. But if he's not really playing and the snap percentage is down, then maybe I, pivot off of him. But what's your Colin? We'll go Colin, Joe. What's any thoughts on Dotson?
I think with the price, I feel like the shot's worth it. I mean, it's not like you're spending a high draft pick getting him or anything like that. So I think the only thing is just it's just hard to tell what's going on with that whole wide receiver room. Because like you said, Terry is still undecided. Curtis Samuel still probably hurt his hamstring again or something just now. So it's tough. I mean, if those 2 roles aren't filled, I mean, someone's got to step up. And I mean, it's not going to be Anthony Gandy Golden or something. Remember that?
He's a tight end.
He's a tight end. Oh yeah. That's crazy. See, and
he's going to try quarterback next year.
Yeah,
he's also the backup kicker. So it's a wild ride out there in Washington. So I don't know. I think but like I said, I think just with the cost, it really doesn't do you anything. It doesn't do you any bad, because if it hits, then you have say you play in a keeper league, there you go. There's your keeper in the what? What do you know what his ADP is right now?
Dotson?
Yeah.
So I wrote wide receiver 63. So overall, it's got to be pretty low
down there.
That's almost undrafted, I would say.
He went in the 14th round of a mock for me today.
Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of your draft, if you can get someone who can potentially be like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1, if the situation is at hand, steal.
All right, Joe, what's your thoughts on Dotson?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. Well, I've said it so many times with the wide receiver 1 thing. He has an opportunity to do that, so we're going to skip right over that point. I actually just did a video on this, and hopefully my audio holds up well enough to get through, because I don't know why it keeps kicking back and forth on me. But he gets the Lions, the Jaguars, and the Titans in the first 5 weeks. So for me, this could be the easiest breakout for him, and I'm going to read a few stats off when I get down to it. But the Jags have allowed the 7th most receptions last year to wide receiver positions. The Lions allowed the 9th most yards to the wide receiver position. And then the Titans in week 5, who is their opponent, they've allowed the 4th most touchdowns to the wide receivers, the 2nd most yards, the 2nd most receptions, and the 2nd most fantasy points. So at that round, at that draft price, you got to go for it. But at that draft price, you might as well go for it. And if Terry's out, he's going to be in every one of my DFS lineups, pretty much. If Terry's out, he's going in every DFS lineup, and I don't even care what his price is.
But everyone's always saying, but it's Carson Wentz throwing him the ball.
Carson Wentz will be good for the first 4 or 5 weeks, and then mentally he'll crack and he'll lose to he might lose to the Jaguars, but at least we'll get some yards out of it.
Man,
he'll never lose to the Jags.
I had to watch him personally. So we got 4 or 5 weeks,
yeah,
and
true.
he'll crack.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh geez.
So you do have a Wentz jersey though, right, Joe, or no?
I had a Wentz jersey. I taped it up
I
to
didn't
make
know
it
that.
a
I just
Tebow jersey. I made it a Tebow
Oh my
jersey,
god.
and now I gave it away. So I don't have it.
You're a jersey taper?
Yeah, well, just because I love Tebow and I wasn't going to go buy a Tebow jersey. So.
No, I'm just playing.
as long as you're not one of those like burn the jersey guys, and
No, the only time I've
Yeah,
ever
those are
burned
the
the
worst.
jersey, I burned like a Foreman Mills Atlanta Falcons jersey. I had no name, no number on it when we beat them the first time the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. And that doesn't count because nobody was on it. And I'm pretty sure it was missing the N from Falcons, which shouldn't have been on the jersey anyway. So it was all types of goofy.
Yeah. I have so many that I probably have like the leeway to do that, but again, it's just like the strangest thing in sports is when they're like, burn the jersey, like that's gonna do something. Like the guy's like in a different state, he like feels it somehow. Like
he Venmos you your money back. You get like a little thing from Carson Wentz, like here's $100. Like
Nick could burn he could burn a jersey every trade that happens.
You really could.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I think we had next one on the list. I want to shift over because we got 40 minutes in. Big breakout. So again, a little bit different because beating your ADP doesn't necessarily mean you have a massive breakout because I did a thread for breakouts earlier and I tried to define it for myself, but fantasy, some of these terms are different person to person. My definition might be different than Colin's and Joe's. Same with like sleeper and bust. That's just we kind of know what it means, but we kind of perceive it in different ways. But I perceive it as a player who takes a significant leap in their overall fantasy finish for their position.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe they finished the wide receiver 25 last year, and now they're going to be the wide receiver 5. That's a huge breakout. There's a huge difference in what happened. Or maybe it's they smashed their current ADP in their first season. So I had a thread earlier and like Breece Hall, we can't compare what he did last year. He's a rookie. Travis Etienne, can't compare what he did last year. He was hurt. So kind of fits that category as well. But Colin, big breakout. Who is it for you?
For me this year, it's funny because of probably what Joe has to say against it. But I think it's going to be Rashad Bateman. And it's really nothing like I think he's going to have like this crazy year or anything like that. I just think with the opportunity he has, it's really the sky's the limit for him this year because right now he's going into the season as the wide receiver 1, not the number 1 target, but the wide receiver 1 for the team or for the Ravens. So, and I think him and Lamar had like some games together, but I think he had like more of his games were with Tyler Huntley, if I'm mistaken. But I know it was like kind of a split. It wasn't like all Lamar, but I just think with what he showed, like he has the ability to be a good wide receiver in the NFL. I think like if he wasn't, I don't see why they wouldn't have made a move to get someone else, like maybe like a Julio, which I know they're rumored to get him or something like that. But yeah. I just think the opportunity there because he's not even a wide receiver 3 in terms of off the board. So I think he can easily be a wide receiver 3, if not a wide receiver 2, just based on because Lamar, he's a good quarterback. Like people like to say, oh, all he does is run. But like last year, until he got hurt, he was actually throwing the ball very well. And he usually always has. He just like, if you can run like that, why would you throw the ball and risk turning it over sometimes? Like sometimes you just got to use your athleticism and run. But I just think with the opportunity that Bateman has this year, I don't see why he couldn't break out and like have a good season if he stays healthy, obviously.
And I just want to add to your Lamar Jackson point. Before the bye, I think it was the first, I should have wrote it down somewhere. But before the Ravens bye this past season, Lamar Jackson was number 7 in passing yards. So he actually was passing the ball enough to be top 10, where some people perceive him as being a guy that, is in the bottom 25 to 32 range or something for passing yards. But Rashad Bateman, and I'll go to Joe and after this, but 27th overall pick. So day 1 guy in 2020, he started the season off banged up. But right when he came in, he saw targets almost immediately. And we saw a glimpse week 14, 7 catches for 103 receiving yards, 17.3 fantasy points. So that, shows his ability of what he can do. Could he do it consistently? I think that's the big question mark, or will the volume be consistent? But Hollywood's out of the system, who had 7 games with 10 plus targets. So it's an interesting opportunity. Some people are very high. Some people are a little bit skeptical. And Joe, this is like, something we were going to talk about later, but we should just pivot right into it for you. You listed him as a guy that you felt was pretty polarizing. So does that mean that you have just a lot of questions about Bateman, or are you kind of out on Bateman, or what's your thoughts?
I am all over the board on Bateman because, he's got 146 open targets from Marquise Brown leaving that are up there. And yes, he's a wide receiver 1. And we've talked about it so much, I'm not going to say that again. But, I worry because that's the most that the Ravens have thrown while having Lamar Jackson. They want to get back to that run scheme. That's who they are at their core. And I just worry if that's going to be possible with him and Andrews there. And obviously this all depends on, like you were saying, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, if the backs are healthy. If they're healthy, that's what scares me from Bateman. That's why he's lower than a guy like Mooney for me. I like Mooney over him. Again, because it's wide receiver 1, but I just think they'll throw to him more because they're going to be behind and all that fun stuff. But with Lamar running, and if those 2 backs are healthy running, I get nervous. He's one of the few that has me bouncing back and forth. Some days I love him, some days I don't. And it really just kind of depends on how I build my team, because if he's the 3rd, 4th receiver I have, I don't care as much. If he's my 2nd, I'm nervous.
Yeah. And I like that we're talking about something like this, because I feel like when you talk fantasy football, or, you produce content at, any degree, that people kind of look at you and say, you can't have these guys that you're kind of on the fence with and you're juggling around in your rankings. Everybody expects you to be in or out, or have where you think they are. And that's just not how it goes sometimes. We
all started just like anyone who's watching this that doesn't write content. We were all just fans of the game, not really knowing everything. We don't know everything right now. So there's going to be points where we're all like, oh, damn, what the hell do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. And the range of outcomes, especially for the wide receiver position, is lengthy, just to say the least. You got guys that can finish top 15 or top 30, and you say, well, that's not a huge difference, but it is, especially when you're taking guys at certain points in the draft. But Joe, I do want to go, we'll shift right into your guy for big breakout. I like this pick as well. Who is it?
I like Russell Gage, and this is yet another player I won't shut the hell up about, apparently. No Gronk. As of now, no Gronk. As of now, Godwin's probably, he's going to miss a few games, Godwin at least. I think Godwin and Gronk are both going to show up midseason. But we all know
we're here to win.
Right? AB is not showing up whatsoever. So now you're talking about Gronk being out, Godwin being out, Antonio Brown not being allowed anywhere near the NFL, Mike Evans being the only one there, and Tom Brady recruits Russell Gage to come in. So if Tom Brady sees something, then I need to see something. And on top of all that, if it ends up being Fat Leonard Fournette and he doesn't drop the weight and the run game's not moving as well too, there's just so many positive what ifs for Russell Gage that he has to do something. And I will never question Tom Brady, because the dude just lives at the Super Bowl. So he knows more than I do about football.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to see, him voice and say that he wanted Russell Gage, which I like Russell Gage too. But if somebody's like, guess who Tom Brady said he wants, I would never just be him. Russell Gage. I would never say that.
Never.
This past season, following the bye, weeks 7 through 17, so the rest of the fantasy season from week 7 on, when he was getting some volume, Gage was the wide receiver 21 overall, which was good. It showed that he could handle some volume. 3 weeks over 20 fantasy points if we counted that week 18. And you look at this offense; it's a pass-heavy offense. Tom Brady wanted him there. Chris Godwin, I don't think Colin, I know that's one of your guys, and I'm not out on Chris Godwin, but part of me thinks that they want Chris Godwin 150% for the playoffs. I'm not going to say that he's not going to play next season, but I don't think that they're going to rush him back necessarily. If he's on track, then he's good. But if he's going through his rehab and they're like, hey, you know what? We're winning games without you right now. We need you first round of the playoffs. Then maybe they don't rush him back. So, that opens up even a longer spell for Russell Gage. Plus, if you think about it, I was kind of out on Russell Gage a little bit at first, because I'm like, hey, as soon as Godwin is back, his value is going to shift. But last year went with Antonio Brown, who I'm not comparing them to at all, but I'm saying, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Gronk, you could have played those guys on a weekly basis for fantasy football. So that still kind of shows that even with Godwin back, there is a ceiling for Russell Gage, who, again, is not going very high in fantasy football drafts. But Colin, you same page as Gage or not as into him for this coming season?
For redraft, I like him for the first, I would say like six to 8 games, just because obviously that's probably when he'll get most of his opportunity. Not saying like you said, not saying he'll fade away, but I just think once Godwin does come back, because he's kind of like, believe it or not, he's kind of Brady's security blanket. Like, Evans is the big play guy. Godwin's kind of like that. He's always in the middle of the field open. So like, it's tough to say. I like the opportunity for sure. I have a few shares of him in Dynasty that I'm excited for a few weeks. But it's tough to say because I think I do agree. I think they will not rush Godwin back because they know what a healthy Godwin does for them. So and they're not necessarily, they don't need him to come back soon. So I think it's just better to like get him healthy. But I do like Gauge where he's going because of what you can get for a few weeks. And like in redraft, all you have to do is just win each week. Like you don't have to, it's not like Dynasty where you have to think about the future and like next year or anything. You just have to win. And if you win early, it makes the rest of the season easier. So like Gauge can be that guy for you to help win those like chunk of games in the beginning of the year.
Also saw some like best ball strategies where guys will take like a Russell Gage and then like later in the draft, I don't know about later. I'd have to look at ADP, but like balance him off with like a Jameson Williams who like is the opposite. He might not like be relevant for the first 6 games and then the rest of the season he might be. Yeah. I saw that.
That's great.
Interesting, but
smart. I like it.
Yeah, the best ball's taking over a lot of stuff right now. So the strategy.
My wallet.
It takes away all the heartache. Like you don't have to worry about like, oh, do I start this guy or that guy? It's like they got it.
You can apply some things to redraft as well. But let's fly through this last topic here. We kind of went through Joe's pick, which was Rashad Bateman, but this last one, polarizing players for 2022. So again, it's normal to be like, I don't know, exactly where I'm ranking this guy right now. I'm kind of on the fence. I'll start things off, and I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. But Michael Thomas, wide receiver 24 right now for Fantasy Pros PPR. 2018, 125 for 1405. So that's a lot of catches for good receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. 2019, 149 receptions, which is just like unbelievable. Like there's a majority of the league doesn't even see that amount of targets for 1725 and 9 touchdowns. So back-to-back 9 touchdown seasons, back-to-back seasons above 1,400 receiving yards. Just insane. 2019, he was the wide receiver 1 with 366.9 PPR points. The next guy had 276. So like he was like almost 100 points ahead of the wide receiver 2. So that's how much of a baller he was that season. But the last 2 years hasn't been relevant, hasn't been useful for the fantasy world. It's a strange situation because I guess like, he needed to get some sort of procedure done. It was delayed. There was some back and forths with the Saints. It's been this 2-year like ankle issue, and the price tag at wide receiver 24, that's a big gamble to me because you're saying he's going to be a wide receiver 2 and you have to actually draft him at that spot, meaning you are drafting a decent pick at that position. So I'm kind of on the fence because I see the guy that can break fantasy, and he's probably not going to be that guy ever again just because he's a little bit older now. But then I also see a guy that has not been in the fantasy world for 2 years now. So in all honesty, I don't know if I should rank him as 24 or 44 or 12. Like I'm all over the place with Michael Thomas, but we'll go Joe Collin. What's your Michael Thomas thoughts?
Michael Thomas is a do not draft for me. I don't know anybody who could take 2 years off from playing a professional sport, come back and annihilate it still. The only person is like Michael Jordan, and he's just not that. Like, he's just not that level of talent in this sport. So it's just not gonna happen to me. They went out, they got Chris Olave for a reason, I think, in case Michael Thomas can't be there. And if Michael Thomas is great, then they have a 1-2 punch. But I don't see it for Michael Thomas. And he did all those like the 2018s, the 2019s. That's Drew Brees. Like, that's not even Jameis Winston. That's a whole different style of quarterback for me with a whole different coach now. Like you said, this angle took 2 years to heal. He wanted out, or he wanted in, or he wanted out, or he wanted in. It was always back and forth. And I'm not touching that. It's too high for me to touch that.
Colin, same with you, or do you have a little bit more optimism for Michael Thomas?
Yeah, I'm the same way. He's on my like do not draft list. Unless he like falls like heavily, but like I'd much rather take Olave where he's going compared to where Michael Thomas is going, just because he probably won't see that type of volume. Because the last time Jameis Winston gave anyone that type of volume, he threw 30 interceptions. So I doubt he's going to be slinging the ball like that to him this year, especially if he can't even get on the field. Like, that's still the biggest question mark, which is the weirdest thing. So, like, to me, I don't even want to take the chance. It's almost like Christian McCaffrey, but we know what Christian McCaffrey, like, he's back. Like, we know his situation. With Michael Thomas, we don't know what's going on with him, like, as much as CMC. So, like, to me, I'd rather take even Landry, like, later than Michael Thomas at this point right now.
And a guy like McCaffrey, we last year, even though he missed time again, we saw him have elite games last year, not 2 years ago with Michael Thomas. So
Exactly.
Michael Thomas hasn't played in COVID, has he? Like, at all?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
He
either.
was pre-pandemic.
He is COVID. He's COVID.
Yeah.
That might just be part of his his issue coming back. Maybe I don't know. I don't know. Some sort of a deep fear of coming back to the league. But Colin, let's go. Let's finish the show off with your polarizing guy, and then we'll close things up as we get close to hour mark here.
Cool. Yeah, it's really not too complicated. It's just because I have no idea what type of quarterback situation this guy is running into. Although we did see some of it last year, it's really hard to predict. But my guy is DK Metcalf. Obviously, out of worldly talent, like, the dude can ball, athletic specimen. But Geno Smith or Drew Lock's throwing him the ball this year. And I don't know about you, but I think Geno Smith has only started 4 or 5 games the last 4 or 5 years. So if that's his starting quarterback going into the season, which I think right now, like, that's the plan, even though Pete Carroll loves Drew Lock, I can't. I think he's going as wide receiver 14 right now. Let me see if that's correct. Or no, wide receiver 15. So to me, that's just way too rich to have as your probably wide receiver 2 on your team. Maybe even wide receiver 1, depending on how you go. But that price is just too high for a player that I really I can't be confident in his QB situation to where he's going to score a lot of points, even touchdowns. Like, I can see his touchdowns going way down this year just because I don't really see this offense being super high powered or anything like that. So for me, I'd rather be wrong than have him and be upset that I took him.
Yeah, I can feel you there. The counter side, before I agree with you on some things. This past season, weeks 5 through 8, Geno Smith played 54% or more of the snaps, so he was the quarterback for a majority of those games. DK, for those handful of weeks, was the wide receiver 4 overall, averaged 19 fantasy points. But it's a small sample size, and we're kind of nitpicking. So he actually had some decent games with Geno Smith. Geno Smith, I will say this too. I don't know if he's getting in trouble or anything, or if he's going to have any sort of suspension. But he did have this DUI situation not super long ago. Yeah. Let me look at Drew Lock, and you can say, well, like, Drew Lock, when he was like YOLO chucking it up to Cortland Sutton that one season, like, Sutton actually was pretty decent as like a deep threat. But I think Drew Lock is terrible. Maybe you can prove me wrong this year. So, there's like, you can find signs. Yeah, it's tough because you can like find. I like DK a lot. You can find signs say his athletic ability and he can take the top off of a defense, but I don't think this offense is going to be good, which I think matters more for the wide receiver position than it does for like a running back position because you see running backs have good seasons for fantasy when their team's not that good. I think this offense is going to struggle a bit, and I don't like the quarterback situation. And DK last season had a lot of down weeks with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was pretty bad in some of those games, but he is interesting because if it was still Russell Wilson, you'd be putting him inside your top 12, maybe potentially. So it's very different. But Joe, are you still kind of in on DK? Are you out? What's the word before we close things out?
I don't really want anybody from Seattle. I don't want to draft from that offense, to be fair. I'm hoping Drew Lock is the starter for my dynasty share, so I'm just going to say it on every show until the season starts so I can use him at least. But I kind of see exactly. I kind of see this like I was just saying with the 49ers running backs. Like I could either have DK at his ADP or Tyler Lockett at his ADP like 3-4 rounds later. I'll just get the cheaper guy. If I'm taking somebody from the offense, give me the cheaper guy. I know Tyler Lockett was more amazing because he had Russell Wilson. I don't really want either of them, but I could get Tyler Lockett again as like my fourth wide receiver instead of DK as my second and not feel so disgusting.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair at the end of the day. Maybe in a couple weeks from now when DK Metcalf's in Chicago, then we'll have a different outlook for him, and we'll all be on the same page and know exactly where to rank this guy. But we just hit the hour mark, so I want to make sure I let these guys go at a decent hour here and make sure that they plug where to find them because these guys are on Twitter all the time, super active and great parts of the fantasy community. So I really appreciate you guys coming back on the show after my first show took a shit on us, and this one actually went pretty good. So Joe, where can we find you on Twitter and anything you want to plug before we close it?
Yeah, I mean, it was just my audio this time that was screwing up, but you can just find me anywhere on any social media, JPEP20. I'll have some articles coming out for Fantasy Pros soon, a couple more videos for Club Fantasy coming out. The Tripwire podcast with Triple Play. We do it every Tuesday, comes out every Thursday. So just keep an eye on that because we're doing Dynasty stuff right now until the season starts because we're trying to fill some of the boring time in the NFL offseason.
Yeah. Always looking for stuff to talk about, but once you hit it and it works out, it's well worth it, especially during this time of year. People are slowly getting more and more interested. But Colin, same question. Where can we find you on social media and anything you want to plug before we close the show?
Yeah, man. You can find me at Shotgun Fantasy on Twitter. My hope is to have some more content for you guys here soon from the IDP guys. Just like I said, just kind of dealing with this wedding. It's less than like 2 months away, so I'm just trying to get all those details situated and whatnot. So
kind of important.
Like little things, here and there. Gotta pay for like all these payments that just happen to pop up every now and then. But no, it was truly like an honor being on here with you all and talking football, man. It was really fun. I appreciate it, and yeah, man, you guys are the shit. Appreciate it.
It was fun, man.
There we go. If you guys are not following these guys already, make sure you guys change that after you listen to the show. But thanks for tuning in. Colin and I have a live draft this week coming up, right? Scott Fishbowl, Chicago.
Oh, yeah, it's a tournament I think some people have heard of. I'm not too sure.
I've been trying to do some research about it. Great cause, but we'll be there. I probably shouldn't have actually went to a thing like that because my daughter's birthday is the next day, so hopefully I'm not like struggling big time. But thanks again for tuning in, guys, and let's keep rolling this off season and help you guys play to win. Have a good night.